Everybody hear me?
I can hear you.
Raise your hand if you can hear me. Okay, perfect. So it looks like we're working. So today's topic, thanks for joining us today. Today's topic is going to be on incapacity and long-term care, and how do we deal with long-term care issues, and how do we determine incapacity in regards to your trust and your powers of attorney that are inside your portfolio that we have. We have a smaller group today, so we're probably just going to make this super informal. And if you have questions, looks like somebody's trying to get in. If you have questions as we're going through this, certainly ask away. Just jump on in and ask the questions that you have. I want to make sure that those of you that are participating today, we address the questions that you have. And since we have such a smaller group here today, that we have the flexibility to do that, you can ask the questions that you have, and I'll do my best to answer those questions. If there aren't any initial questions, I will just kind of jump into the basics of incapacity and how incapacity affects your estate plan. Then we'll talk a little bit about long-term care and how that works, if that's okay. And then we'll wrap things up and we'll do a drawing once again for one of our gift baskets. And one of you lucky people that are attending today will get a great gift basket. But I hope everybody's doing well. Hope everybody's safe. And with this new Delta variant that's going around, I hope everyone is staying safe and healthy, and everyone's doing all right. Incapacity. So incapacity takes many different forms. A lot of times people think incapacity is only if I have Alzheimer's or dementia or something mentally, but incapacity can also be physical. And so, certainly if we have COVID, we're in the hospital, we're on a ventilator, we're incapacitated. If if I'm in the hospital from a car accident and mentally I'm fine, I'm awake and I can function mentally, but my body can't move, I'm incapacitated physically. So there's different levels of incapacity. The one that most of us are familiar with is, like I say, mental incapacity, and how most of your documents were drafted in that big binder that all of you have. Is it's going to, in your trust, in your financial power of attorney, in your healthcare powers of attorney, it's going to say that as long as you have capacity, you are in charge of making your own decisions. You're in charge of managing your financial affairs, taking care of your healthcare decisions, end of life decisions. Those decisions fall upon you as long as you have capacity. It's only once you lack capacity that somebody else steps into your shoes, takes over, and does those things for you. So how do we prove, or how does your agent, your son, your daughter, your niece, your nephew, whoever it is that you put on your documents, how do they prove that you lack capacity? What do they have to do to show that you don't have capacity? And there's a couple of ways that they can do that. The number one way that people typically do that is they go and they get a doctor's letter. So they'll go to your attending physician and they'll get your attending physician to sign a letter, a form that will say, Dave Eastman no longer has capacity to manage his own financial affairs or make his own healthcare decisions. And once we get that letter from the doctor, sometimes it requires 2 doctor's letters, but a lot of times it's just the 1 doctor's letter. Once we have those letters, then those letters can be used by your agent, your son, your daughter, your niece, your nephew, whoever it is that's on your trust or your powers of attorney, to start taking over making financial decisions for you or healthcare decisions for you. So as an example, let's say that I have Alzheimer's and it's to the point where, I'm in a nursing home and I need 24-hour care. I don't have any idea what's going on. And my daughter is listed as my successor trustee of my trust. And she wants to go into the bank and start managing my bank account and paying the bills and maybe selling my house to help pay for the long-term care costs and doing all those kinds of things. Well, if she just walks into the bank with the trust document and nothing other than the trust document and says, here, my name is Maddox, I should be in charge of the assets. I'm the daughter. Here's the trust document that says I am the successor trustee. The bank is going to say, okay, that's great, but you're the successor trustee. Where's your dad? He's the initial trustee on the trust. So where is he at? And she's going to have to say, well, he's incapacitated. He's in a nursing home. And I mean, the bank's not just going to take her word for it that that's the case. They want something to prove that I don't have capacity, that I lack capacity. And what she's going to have to give to them to prove that are the doctor's letters. Okay, so as long as she can give them the 2 doctor's letters that say I don't have capacity anymore, then with the trust document that shows she's the backup trustee, once she does that, then they'll give her control of the accounts and let her manage things, and she can sell the house and do all the other stuff that needs to be done. That's one way that she could prove incapacity. The other way she could prove incapacity is she could go to court. Now, we typically don't want to be in court. That's why we created all the documents we did for you, is to stay out of court. But if I became combative, right, I have Alzheimer's or dementia, and I'm arguing with my daughter, I'm not going to go to the doctor. I'm not going to get in the car with her. I don't want anything to do with her. I'm not going anywhere because I don't know who she is anymore. I think she's this, terrorist that's trying to torture me or kill me because I don't know who she is anymore. And so she can't get me to the doctor to get those doctor's letters. She could petition the court to have me deemed to be incapacitated. And then what happens is there'll be a hearing, and the court will appoint a court-appointed attorney over me, and I'll have my own attorney appointed, and she'll have her attorney, and there'll be a hearing, and then the judge will decide if I lack capacity or not. If the judge decides I lack capacity, the judge will give my daughter letters that will appoint her to be in charge of my affairs, and then she can take those letters into the bank with the trust document, everything else, and then she'll be in charge of everything that way. So that's the other way that we can deem somebody to be incapacitated, is going to court, which we typically try to avoid, but there are situations where that's the only way we can do it, because the loved one has so much dementia or incapacity that they're not gonna allow their kids to take them to the doctor or whatever else. And so those situations arise. The other way that your loved ones can take over and manage your affairs for you, and it's written in your documents this way, is it's going to say that if you go missing for a period of a certain amount of time, a lot of the documents will be 30 days or something like that, then your loved ones, your successor trustee, can take over and start managing your affairs for you. And you're sitting there saying, well, why would I go missing for 30 days or something? When would that ever happen? COVID is a great example of that. So my wife and I, back in March of 2020 for spring break, right before COVID hit, we had planned a trip to go to the Dominican Republic. And this is before COVID was crazy and before it had taken off. And so we fly over to the Dominican Republic, and we're over there, and then COVID does its thing and it takes off. We luckily got on the last flight. Delta actually flew a plane in specifically to get the last Americans off the island and back to the United States. And but for Delta flying that flight in, we would not have made it back to the United States within a reasonable time. And who knows when we would have gotten back. And so that would be a situation where, let's say they didn't come in and get us, and my wife and I are stuck in the Dominican Republic for a month, right? Because we couldn't get back to the United States. Well, who then is going to be able to manage our financial affairs and pay our bills and do all the stuff that still needs to happen while we're stuck in the Dominican Republic? Well, that would be our successor trustee. So that would be a situation where then they could take over and start doing those things while we're not here. Or if you're detained, heaven forbid, you're in Switzerland and you get detained for public intoxication, you have 1 too many beers while you're out having a good time in Switzerland, and you're arrested in Switzerland, then your indisposed for 30 days and somebody needs to take over your affairs for the United States and manage things for you. So that'd be another situation where somebody could take over for you. So hopefully that kind of answers like, well, when does incapacity occur? How do we determine incapacity? How do my kids take over if I am incapacitated? Those are some of the ways that we go about doing that. Certainly, there's lots of times when the client will come in and sit down with me and with the kid, like let's say it's Mrs. Smith and her daughter Judy Smith, right? And they're coming in and Mrs. Smith, who's my client, says, Dave, I've just been diagnosed with dementia. It's not to the point where I need help or anything, but at some point it's going to get there. And so since I know it's going to happen at some point in time, I want to appoint my daughter Judy to be over my affairs right now. I want to add her on the document as a co-trustee with me, so she doesn't have to go get a doctor's letter. She doesn't have to go to court and get appointed if I start losing my memory significantly. And so at that point, we're just proactive with it, right? We know there's been a diagnosis of dementia. We know at some point, Judy, the daughter, is going to have to start managing things. So maybe we just add Judy on the document as a co-initial trustee or as an immediate power of attorney. And by doing that, then we don't have to get doctor's letters or go to court or anything like that, because we've changed the document to make the daughter Judy a co-trustee with the parent, not a successor trustee to the parent, if that makes sense. So those are some things that we can do if we know we're headed down that path of incapacity because there's been a diagnosis of dementia or Alzheimer's or Parkinson's or something like that. So any questions on incapacity? How do we determine incapacity? How do we get your loved ones to be appointed if that happens? Is there any questions on that? If there are, you can certainly type your questions in the chat box as well, if you don't feel comfortable speaking up on the Zoom call. So the next thing then would be long-term care. Okay. So long-term care, the number one expense for the elderly today is going to be long-term care. There's no doubt about that. There's 10,000 baby boomers turning 65 every single day in the United States. And that's going to be that way for the next 10 to 15 years. So just imagine what's going to happen to our healthcare system. It's just overloaded. It's just, there's going to be so many baby boomers getting older and aging. And it's basic supply and demand. You know, what's going to happen to the cost of long-term care? It's going to go through the roof. There's not enough doctors, not enough nurses, not enough physical therapists. There's not enough of them in the United States. Not enough long-term care facilities. I mean, right now in Phoenix, you can drive down and you can see hotel chains that are being converted into long-term care facilities because the demand is so high, and it's just going to keep going that way. And so how do we pay for that long-term care cost? Because it is outrageous, and it's only going to get more outrageous as more baby boomers age into that category where they need long-term care help. There's no magic pill. So anybody if you go to a seminar, you go to a presentation, somebody takes you to Ruth Chris Steakhouse on a seminar saying, hey, come to our seminar, we'll buy you a filet and we'll teach you about how you can pay for long-term care. And here's an easy way to do it. And don't fall for that. Right? Go eat your steak, get the free dinner, but do not fall for the easy button. There is no easy button when it comes to long-term care. The only way you're going to be able to pay for long-term care is you're going to privately pay. What does that mean? It means you buy a check out of your bank account every single month, paying for the long-term care. What is the average cost for long-term care in Maricopa County today? And every county is different, right? And then they send out every year what that cost is per county. So Pinal County is different than Yavapai. Yavapai is different than Maricopa. And every county sends out a report every year that says this is the average cost for long-term care in the county. Maricopa County, last time I looked, the average cost is going to run you close to $8,000 a month. That's for skilled 24-hour long-term care. right? So that's not, I don't need 24-hour care. I just need, I can go into independent living. I can take care of myself. That's not, you can find places for $3,000, $4,000 a month, $5,000 a month, or stuff like that. But if we need 24-hour care, skilled nursing, average cost of Maricopa County today is going to be about $8,000. And once again, that number is going to go up every month.
Yeah, today.
And so how do we pay for that? Right? How do we pay for $8,000 a month of long-term care? Well, there's a couple of ways that that you can do that, and none of them are great options. Okay, so the first way you can pay for long-term care is you can privately pay. Once again, what does privately pay mean? It means we write a check out of our account every single month to the long-term care facility. Here's $8,000, here's $8,000 every month, right? We liquidate the IRAs, we liquidate the brokerage account, we sell the house, whatever we need to do, we're privately paying for our long-term care. And that might be the best plan for all of you, most of you, some of you, I don't know. Everyone's going to be different. And certainly if you have an estate of $2, $3, $4 million, you probably have enough assets to privately pay for your long-term care costs where you don't need to go the other routes, right? You basically, you've self-insured. You've got enough assets to take care of your long-term care needs or expenses. And so that's one way you'll pay for it. The second way you'll pay for long-term care is you'll have a long-term care insurance policy. Most people don't have a long-term care insurance policy. And a lot of people don't like long-term care. Most people don't like insurance. Most people hate paying for insurance. I understand that. I get that. I'm not an insurance salesman. I don't sell insurance. I have no dog in that fight. But that is one way you can pay for long-term care insurance, is having paying for long-term care is having long-term care insurance. One good thing that they're starting to do with long-term care insurance that's different than most insurance is you can buy a long-term care insurance policy that has a death benefit to it. So kind of as an example that I often use when I do seminars on long-term care is, let's say that I have State Farm insurance for my car insurance. And I've had it for, let's say, 30, 40 years, right? And I've never been in a car accident. And I write the check every single month, every quarter, every year, how often I pay my premium to State Farm. Now, when I die, does State Farm write a check to my kids and say, hey, your dad was a great driver. We never had to pay $1 out on any claims against him. Here's $1 million back on the premiums he paid. No, right? I don't have that policy. None of you have that policy because there's no such thing, right? There's no such thing as getting a death benefit on your car insurance. It's you write the check, you don't get in a car accident, you'll never see it again. It's gone, poof, never get the benefit back. But with long-term care, and long-term care insurance used to be the same way, right? We'd pay for our long-term care insurance premium, $5,000, $6,000 a year, whatever it is. And if we never need long-term care, if we end up dying in a car accident or die at our home from old age and we never go into long-term care, kiss that premium payment goodbye. You'll never get it back. It's just like any other insurance, it's gone. Like I say, now you can actually get long-term care insurance that has a death benefit. So, it can be set up where if you need part of the long-term care insurance portion of it, then it eats into the death benefit. So let's say I go into long-term care for 3 years, I use $200,000 out of my long-term care insurance policy, and there's still $500,000 of benefit left. That $500,000 would then pay out to my kids when I die. So I don't lose all the benefit of paying for that long-term care insurance policy. So there's some hybrid things out there now that are kind of interesting, but long-term care insurance is definitely not for everybody. The older that you are, the more you're going to pay for that premium. And so it may be cost prohibitive. You may not be able to afford it. And so it won't work for everybody, but it is one way to pay for long-term care. Those of you that have a long-term care insurance policy, keep it, keep paying for it. It's probably one of the best things you've ever done. Statistically speaking, the last statistic put out by the federal government when it comes to long-term care is that 70% of us will need some form of long-term care during our lifetime. 70%, 7 out of 10 of us are going to need some form of long-term care during our lifetime. So we're getting older, or the advances in medicine have made it so that we can live longer, but they have found no cure for the things that typically put us in a skilled nursing home. There's no cure for Alzheimer's, there's no cure for dementia, there's no cure for Parkinson's. Those diseases that put us in a long-term care facility, they've found no cure for, and you can live for many, many years with those ailments. My grandmother had Parkinson's disease. She lived with it for 30 years. So, you know, it's one of those things where you don't know, what's going to happen to you, and you could get Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, dementia, and live with it for many years, and then it could become expensive for the long-term care. So just realize that. So privately pay, long-term care insurance is the second way you're going to pay for it. And the long-term care insurance is that's where you get invited to the Ruth Chris Steakhouse, come to Outback and we'll give you the filet. And what they're trying to do is sell you a long-term care insurance policy. They're usually insurance agents, and they have all the money to take you to Ruth Chris. And when you're invited to those things, as mature clients that you are, you're kind of you're red marked, right? You're flagged as people that to send these marketing materials to get you to come to these presentations. And they're trying to sell you a product, and that. And most of the time it's going to be insurance or an annuity of some kind, something like that. So just be cautious of that, be aware of that. Like I say, it can be a useful tool, but just know going in, it can be expensive to do as well. Third way you can pay for long-term care. So privately pay, long-term care insurance. The third way you're going to pay for it is you're going to hope and pray that there's some type of government benefit that's out there to help you pay for it. The government benefit that's out there right now is called Medicaid, not Medicare. Okay, so most of you are on Medicare. Medicare is your health insurance. So when you go to a doctor's visit, Medicare, because that's your health insurance. Medicaid is the government's form of long-term care. Okay, so the first thing you have to understand about Medicaid is it is not for everybody. A lot of times people think, well, I paid into the system, I'll qualify for Medicaid for long-term care, and that's how I'll pay for my long-term care expense. Well, Medicaid is a means-tested program, which means if you have the means to pay for your own long-term care, you will not qualify for Medicaid. So it's not for everybody. Right? Bill Gates will never qualify for Medicaid. Warren Buffett will never qualify for Medicaid. If you have an estate that's $3, $4, $5 million, you'll never qualify for Medicaid unless there's some serious maneuvering of assets. And that's fine, because those of us that have those sizes of estates shouldn't be trying to qualify for Medicaid. Medicaid was set up for the indigent, those that can't afford to pay for long-term care expenses themselves. So it's a means-tested program. There are certain things you have to do to qualify for Medicaid. Okay, so it's a three-pronged test. There's three things that you have to do to qualify for Medicaid. The first thing is you have to meet a physical test. So they'll send a caseworker out to the house. In Arizona, our form of, kind of back up a little history on Medicaid. Medicaid is the federal government's form of long-term care. And then every state in the United States adopts their own form of Medicaid. Okay, so California has their own form of Medicaid. Texas has their own form of Medicaid. Arizona has their own form of Medicaid. In Arizona, we call our Medicaid system ALLTEX. That's an acronym like everything else is in the government. It stands for Arizona Long-Term Care System. ALLTEX, Arizona Long-Term Care System. And that's just our form of Medicaid. Okay. So in order to qualify for ALLTEX, they'll send a caseworker out. The caseworker is there to make sure that you cannot do what are called activities of daily living, certain things, right? You can't feed yourself, bathe yourself, transport yourself from point A to point B. They're making sure that you can't do those things, and they'll give you a score. And they'll say, Mrs. Smith can't transport herself from point A to point B. She needs help getting up. She needs help bathing. She needs help going to the bathroom. She can't cook. She can't clean, whatever. That's the first test. So the thing about the health test, physical test, is a lot of times most of us, like we normally do, when we know somebody's coming over to our house, we do what? We clean the house and we try to put our best foot forward and we try to show that we can do everything and we're independent and we can take care of ourselves. And we don't want anybody to see that we're fragile and that we can't do certain things and that we can't clean our house. We don't want our house to look like a mess when somebody's coming over. But you have to realize those are the things that you want to show the caseworker. You want the caseworker to see what normal daily living is like for you. Don't try to put your best foot forward because that's not what normal life is like for you. You were trying to show them a clear depiction of what it's like living your life. And so don't try to fabricate it and make it look better than what it is, because you won't pass the health test and then you won't get the benefits. So number one is the health test. The second test is an income test. Okay, so they divide income and assets into two different categories. So it's health, it's income, and it's assets. Those are the three tests. And income is different than assets. Income is what do I have coming in the door every single month, right? Social Security, dividends, pensions. Some of you may still have those. Interest, royalties. That's all income that's coming in every month. And we can only have a certain amount of income coming in every single month. If our income exceeds the amount that all tax allows us to have, you won't qualify for all tax. Now, there's certain things that we can do to still get you under that income threshold amount. We can create a special income only trust. It's called a Miller's Trust, and mitigate that income tax issue or that income issue. But income is the next test. It's about $2,000 of income that you can have coming in. Anything over that would boot you out of the system and wouldn't allow you to qualify. But once again, let's say I have $3,000 worth of income, we can create this special kind of a trust and still get you to qualify under the income test. So that's our second test, is income. Third test is assets. Assets is different than income. Assets is something I own, right? A house, a car, a checking, a savings, an IRA, brokerage account, life insurance. Those are things I own. What they do with your assets is they take each asset and they put it into one of two different pots. Okay, so you have what's called accountable resource pots, and you have a non-countable resource pot. And they'll take every asset and they'll drop it into one of those two pots. Okay, so the easiest way to explain to you how they're looking at things is telling you what things you can have and they're not going to care about necessarily. And then everything else is a countable resource, which means it will count against you. You can't have it and still qualify for all tax. Your house, your personal residence, where we're living, non-countable resource. That does not account against you. That's important to understand, because the number one question I get from your kids when you have Alzheimer's or dementia, your kids are the ones sitting here saying, we got to put mom in the nursing home, but we can't figure out how to pay for it. We've got this $400,000 house that doesn't have a mortgage on it. We're thinking of selling the house, taking the $400,000 in cash and just paying for her long-term care expense. That might be one option, because then you're privately paying, right? You're back to option one, you're privately paying. And maybe that's the best way to do it. But understand that if you do that, you take a non-countable resource, your house that's worth $400,000, and you convert it into a countable resource, cash. Cash sitting in your bank account is countable. You can't have that. You won't qualify for all tax. But I can keep the house and still qualify for all tax. So maybe it's best to not sell the house. Maybe it's best to keep the house, qualify you for all tax, have all tax pay for the long-term care, keep the house in place as an inheritance for the kids later on. So those are things that we look at. Those are things that we have to massage and review and decide what's best. Should we sell the house? Should we keep the house? And going through that. But a house is a non-countable resource. First non-countable resource. Second non-countable resource is about $2,000 sitting in your checking account or savings account. Okay. Third non-countable resource is a prepaid burial plan. So if you haven't paid for your burial or cremation costs or whatever, go prepay for it. Get that money out of your checking account, because you can't have that in there anyway. Pay for the $10,000, $20,000, $30,000. Maybe you want a gold coffin. You're going to spend $100,000 on your burial. Just pay for that, get it done, taken care of. That's a non-countable resource. Your car, non-countable. So, if I'm driving a 2001 beat up Honda Accord that's got 300,000 miles on it, and I need to go into long-term care, and I've got $60,000 left in my bank account, my kids, what they should do is go buy, the new whatever Mercedes S-Class or whatever, to drive me to all my doctor's appointments. I might as well be going in comfort and style, right? If I can't have the money, so go buy a new car, because that's a non-countable resource. I can keep the car. Okay. And then there's a couple of other things like your personal property, jewelry, artwork, your TV, couch. Those are non-countable resources. You can have all that. That's basically it for non-countable assets. Those are the things you can have, not going to count against you, and you'll still qualify for all tax. Everything else is a countable resource. And once again, if you kind of go back and we think about Medicaid and why it was established and why it was set up, remember, it was set up for the indigent. It was set up for those that couldn't afford to pay for long-term care expenses themselves. Well, then it makes sense that I can't have a ton of stuff, right? Do we want the $20 million client having taxpayers pay for his long-term care? No, none of us think that's fair. And so it makes sense that we can only have a certain amount of assets, because Medicaid was set up for those that can't afford to pay for it themselves. And then everything else we have, our IRAs, our brokerage accounts, our stocks, our bonds, our mutual funds, those are countable resources. Those are things that will count against us, and so we don't qualify for all tax. Now, with that said, I want to be very clear about something. Most of our clients that come in, and it's usually the children or whoever, the successor trustee that's coming in, they're saying, Dave, Judy Smith has to go into long-term care. How do we pay for that? It's $8,000 a month and whatever. What do we do? These are the assets. This is the income. Physically, she's going to qualify because she can't do all these things for herself anymore. We have to do all those things for her. When I go through this, do we say you'll never qualify if I have, a $800,000 estate? That includes my house, my checking, my savings, my cars, my brokerage, my stocks, whatever. Does that mean I won't qualify because I have too much of countable resources? No, there's things that we can do, right? We can manipulate assets. We can shift an asset that would be otherwise countable to a non-countable resource, right? If I have $50,000 sitting in my savings account, that's a countable resource. Make it so I wouldn't qualify. But maybe I need a new roof on my house. Maybe I need a new pool in my backyard. Maybe I need to fix all the cabinetry in my kitchen, the flooring, right? So take the 50,000, convert it into a non-countable resource by making an improvement to the home. Or the example I gave was I have an old car, sell the car, take the 50,000, buy a new car, right? So you can manipulate assets, change assets around. We can convert things from an asset to an income stream.
Totally.
Right. So let's say I have a $100,000 IRA, non-countable resource, or sorry, countable resource. That if I have that sitting over here as a countable resource, I wouldn't qualify. Well, maybe we liquidate the IRA and we convert it from an asset to an income stream. We put it into a Medicaid annuity, and then that's kicking off income every single month. And we can solve the income issue because we can create the special trust I talked about. And that solves that problem. So the point I'm trying to make is there are things that we can still do to qualify you for all tax Medicaid, even if your estate is over some of those threshold amounts and you have too many resources. There's things that we still do to help people qualify for all tax. And they're legitimate ways. It's not like we're manipulating the system or doing something illegal. Those are all things that are allowed under the all tax rules. So the key with long-term care is the sad thing that ends up happening a lot of times is the client comes in and sees me, not the client, but the kids of the client come in and see me and they say, we've spent everything down. We've sold the house. We blew through all the money. We've written every last check to the long-term care facility. Now we need your help qualifying for all tax. You don't need my help anymore. You don't need any attorney's help. Walk into the Altex office and apply for Altex. I mean, there's no assets you have to manipulate. There's nothing left. She'll qualify. When you need an attorney is when we still have assets and resources that we're trying to preserve, we're trying to keep and qualify you for Altex. That's when you would want to sit down with an attorney, because an attorney can kind of guide you through, okay, here are some things we can do to still keep some of these assets and still qualify you for Altex and get you on those benefits. Now, the other thing to consider with Altex is not every facility is what we call Altex contracted. So you may go and tour 20 facilities in your area, and you may love every one of them, or only love 5 of them, or 4 of them, or 3 of them. But the question you need to be asking each of those facilities when you're touring them is, are you Altex contracted? And not every facility is. And if they're not Altex contracted, that means if you get on Altex to help pay for the long-term care, the facility won't accept that as a form of payment. So that you won't be able to stay there. You're going to have to move to an Altex contracted facility. So the best advice I can give all of you is be prepared, right? It's the Boy Scout motto. It's always be prepared. Always be thinking of, if this happens to me, if I have to go into skilled nursing, I already have the game plan mapped out. I know what's going to happen. I know where I want to go. I've researched the facilities. I know which places are Altex contracted, which places are not Altex contracted. I know, what the patient to staff ratio is, right? If they have 300 people in the facility and there's only 5 people that work there, probably not a good place, right? Go there on the weekends and visit them. Don't go on the weekdays at 12 noon. Right, if you want to really see what a facility is like and how it's run, go on a weekend, go on a nighttime visit, go on a holiday, right? Because people go out of town on holiday, people take vacation on holiday. How much staff do you have on a holiday? How many people do you have on hand that are going to be here on a holiday or at nighttime, right? Those are the things you'll want to know. And then find out if they're Altex contracted, if you're thinking of getting on Altex, because if they're not Altex contracted, you can scratch that one off the list if Altex is your plan, your long-term care plan. You just have to know you're not going to be able to go there and have Altex pay for it. The other thing to understand with Altex contracted facilities is a lot of them are not the best places, right? And so you want to find the place that you're like, I could live here. This is a place I could be comfortable in. A lot of the Altex contracted facilities, they're shared rooms, they're not independent rooms. And so are you going to be okay with that? Is that something you could be okay with? So do your research, right? Be prepared, have a plan in place. Because once again, if 7 out of 10 of us are going to need some form of long-term care, I know how all of us Americans are. Winston Churchill said it the best. Americans are the most optimistic people he's ever been around. We're optimistic by nature. That's what made America great. We love to create and be entrepreneurial, and we think the best and everything's going to happen. It's going to work out, and it makes America great. But it also makes it so that we tend to not plan, and we tend to not be prepared as much as maybe we should be. In this case, if the odds are 7 out of 10 of us are going to need some form of long-term care, you should have a plan in place. You should have something written out. What's going to happen if it happens to you and you have to go into long-term care. How are you going to pay for it? What's the plan to pay for it? What is the facility you want to go to? Have you communicated that to your daughter, son, whoever's going to be in charge of doing those things? So make sure that's all mapped out. That is, in a nutshell, long-term care and how it works. We did that kind of fast. So kind of fed you through a fire hose with that. Hopefully it was helpful. Hopefully you gained something from it. Gave you some ideas and some insights on long-term care. Are there any questions on long-term care, Altex, Medicaid, how it kind of works? Anything about incapacity? Any other questions? If not, then we will do our drawing for the gift basket. So Lisa has our names here in a little bucket. She's drawn a name out. We have Nancy Gossard. Hey, Nancy. So what'll happen is Elisa is going to reach out to you and she'll coordinate a time for you to either drop by the office and get the gift basket, or we'll find another way to get that to you. I think those of you that have received the gift basket, you can attest to the fact that they're pretty good, and everyone that's got them has loved them and enjoyed them. So Nancy, I hope you enjoy it, and thank you for participating today.
Thank you.
Once again, if there's any questions about this presentation, or you need to come in for a review for your estate plan, if it's been over 3 years, good idea to come in, sit down so we can at least review things. Once again, we never charge for consultations. Always remember that. So you can email, you can phone call, you can come in. We never charge for those things. Every 3 years, we should be looking at stuff and reviewing it for you just to make sure it's still working. So if there's ever any questions, always feel free to reach out to us. We're always here to answer questions and help out where we can. And until next month, stay safe. And if we can help you, let us know. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
All right, we'll see you.